I have decided to focus on the topic of being biracial in American society today and what comes along with that. As someone of mixed race who has experienced the feeling of not being quite white enough or fully black enough to identify as either. This is something I noticed growing up on something as simple as standardized testing and filling in the race bubble. It always seemed I didn't really know exactly what to put, so my main goal is to explore how mixed race people identify and are viewed in society. My attendant audience is my classmates. We've spent an entire semester learning about and discussing race, and I feel that it would be interesting to share my personal experiences with race, especially in a situation where someone like myself feels somewhat caught in the middle. A situation that isn't so clear-cut along racial lines. Also, I feel the idea has been touched in this class by learning about hypodescent, but I want to shed more light on it from a first-hand point of view. I think it is best to begin talking about this topic by discussing individual experience. As someone who has lived this experience every day of my life, I think it's fair for me to comment on it. Everybody has a different experience based on where they grew up, the schools they attended, and socioeconomic level of their families. My most vivid memory of my experiences was early on in elementary school. Remember those standardized tests that many of us had to take, and at the end you would get ice cream? Well, for many people, when bubbling in your name in race, it's fairly simple. However, I remember when I got to the race section to bubble, I would always sit there and stare at it for a while. It seemed there was never the correct options to fill. The general white, African American, Hispanic, Latino, or my favorite, other, always seemed to be the options. For whatever reason, it always felt as if by bubbling white, it was an incomplete answer. I guess in reality it was. It's amazing how something as insignificant as a race question from the third grade can stick with you. This short story is only used to highlight the feeling of being stuck in the middle and that feeling of what am I? While this does stand out, the idea of being other never really bothered me that much. However, I'm sure that many people in similar circumstances have felt this stigma of being labeled as other, and it has affected their identity. Over the duration of America's lengthy history, a large part was spent identifying itself as a melting pot. So if I told you that the first national census that allowed people to pick more than one race was in 2000, would you believe me? Seems odd that in the timeline of this country recognizing that people identify as more than one race has only recently come to light from a statistical point of view. Did you know in 2000, 2.4% of Americans identified as only more than one race, and 0.28% of participants in this census identified as both black and white. From 2000 to 2013, the number of white and black biracial Americans has doubled. While it is important to understand the numbers and amount of white, black, biracial people and their personal experiences in this country, it's also important to understand how everyone else views these people. Past research on this topic was generally focused on the perception of white people and what they would categorize biracial people as. This research shows generally what you would think. They categorize biracial people as belonging to the racial category of their minority parent. Therefore, if you're mixed, you're black. More recently, research has been done in regard on the views of blacks on biracial people in America. Again, the research shows that they tend to view people as slightly more black than white. This research shows the overall perception of mixed race people and how they are viewed and more than likely treated in today's society. However, people are subjected to different experiences because many mixed race people, such as myself, do not necessarily appear to look distinctively white or black. The point of this is to simply show my perspective of race and my personal interaction with the concept of race in this country. Questioning which side do I pick? Is there a side to pick? Obviously those were questions from my adolescence, and I now realize there is no side to pick. There really is no right or wrong. Hopefully I was able to allow you guys to view the idea of race from not one side of the fence or the other, from simply black or white, but from an alternative perspective that I feel doesn't get talked about very often. Thank you.